Hi there, I'm Tiffany Jernigan and I am a developer advocate at VMware. So in this video, we're going to be talking about the open source tool called Velero. So if you want to follow along or look at the different guides that we have here about Velero, you can go to tanzu.vmware.com/developer and then go to the category for Kubernetes, and then you can see there are multiple things for Velero. So what is Velero and why do I care? So basically, let's think of a scenario in which all of your replica sets were deleted somehow, and then therefore your deployments are gone and all your pods are gone, and you want to be able to get that back. Or say you have a database, and for some reason that database is completely gone, so everything that you had there, it's all gone. So Velero is here to help with that. So basically it can do backups. So if you want to set a specific interval of when that happens, say maybe I want to back up every single day or every 30 minutes or whatever you want to set it to. Or if you want to be able to do something like I want to back it up right now. And then you can restore from those backups. And you can have this be either in the cluster that you have right now, or you can actually migrate your resources into another cluster. So this guide here is basically what is Velero. So I'm not going to go through everything in here, and I'll let you dig into it a little bit more later. So there are a few use cases. So as I mentioned, there's backing up your cluster, there's restoring it, you can recover from some sort of disaster, you can move things to another cluster. If you, say, want to have two different environments that are the same, you can make sure that you are having the exact same thing running using Velero in both of those. So maybe I want to have different types of testing or development environments. And then you can also make sure that you took a capture of what is the state of my current cluster, and therefore if something fails with a cluster upgrade, then you can still, if you have to revert back and for some reason something didn't work out, you can still have all of the resources that you had on there before. So there are two main components for the Velero architecture. So basically there are the server components that end up running on your cluster. And then there is the Velero CLI tool, and that's used to actually interact with Velero. So really high level of basically of how it works. So Velero basically has a custom resource that is defined with Kubernetes CRD. So that is stored in etcd. Basically, there are controllers that go and process the CRDs to back up and restore your resources. You can choose to, do I want to back up a specific namespace? Do I want to back up everything in there? And there's different ways that you can filter based on it, both for what I want to back up and for what I want to restore. So there's a bunch of different other places to go to look further. So there's the Velero homepage, which I mentioned, I think, was velero.io. And then there's other things that we can go through there. So what we're going to do next is we are going to go through the getting started guide, which is going to involve the demo portion. So if we look over on the side here, there is getting started with Velero. So if we go down here, there are a few prerequisites that you have to have before you can actually start. So first, we need to have a Kubernetes cluster, and that needs to be version 110 or something later than that. It needs to have DNS and container network enabled as well. So I'm using a GKE cluster in this demo, but you don't have to use GKE. There are other options out there. So next, we need to have kubectl or kubectl, or however you decide to pronounce it. I don't know if there is an actual right way. So you need to have that installed on your machine. If you've used Kubernetes before, you probably already have this, and you can check by just doing something like kubectl version. Okay, so then you need to verify that your cluster has a storage class. So a lot of the time by default, you should already have one. So you can check that with kubectl get storage classes. And you can see that I have several in here. And you need that in order to be able to create persistent volumes. So next we need the Velero CLI. So there's a few different ways to install it. I already installed it using Brew. So then you can do Velero version. And well, mine's not set up to work properly, but just so you can see that. Okay, so if we jump down now to the initial setup, so with GKE, you have to make sure that your current IAM user is cluster admin, or you won't be able to create the IAM role required in order to create your RBAC objects. So there's actually a couple more tools that you'll need if you are using GKE or GCP in general. So you need GSUtil, which is for Google Cloud Storage, and then you will also need gcloud itself. So first, I'm going to create some name for my bucket. So if I do bucket, and then it has to be something that isn't already created, so I'm just going to call it like Velero GS. So then let's actually use GSUtil to create it. Cool. Okay, so the next thing to do is we need to get the current GCP project that we're in. So we need to set that to the project ID. Cool. So mine was named for me, and it's related to stuff that I have to do with at work. Okay, so now we need to create a service account. So you can just call it Velero, or if you are using Velero to back up multiple clusters with multiple GCS buckets, for instance, then you might want to have different names for each one, but we're only going to use one. Cool. Okay. So the next step is we need to get the service account email. So there's this nice fancy gcloud command, and you can filter and format it the way you want. So we're going to do that. Okay, so next you need to attach the IAM policies that Velero needs to be able to actually interact with the object store bucket. So you can see what these different role permissions are. So like being able to get disks, be able to create them, things to do with snapshots, to get the zones. So I already created a Velero server previously, and as far as I'm aware, with the way that GCP is set up, if you delete a role, it sticks around for 7 days, so you can't create another role with the exact same name. And so instead of trying to rename it in each one of these, I already have that one there. So basically, you would just run this command here. I'm just going to copy it to show you, but I am not going to actually run it. Okay. So then the next thing would be to add an IAM policy binding to that role with the service account email that we have. All right. So we have that. So then now there is this GSUtil command as well. Cool. Okay. So next thing we need to do is to create a service account key. So let's clear things up real quick, and then we can do that. Okay, so that will create a local file that's just called credentials-velero, and you can kind of see what it was called there, and it will drop it locally where I am right now too. So now, so that's all the stuff that's specific to GCP, and for different other providers, they have their own set of things that you have to do there. So now this is where we get to actually installing Velero. So we have Velero install, as you might expect. Then we give it the provider. So again, here I am using GCP. So there are specific plugins. There's a different plugin for different providers. Then we give it the bucket name that we had created earlier, and then also that credentials file that was just created. So then it goes through and it waits for all of these different resources. So you can see that it's creating custom resource definitions within the cluster. And it actually is going through, it's telling you what it's attempting to create, and it actually will show you when it's done creating it. And this can take a little bit of time, so demo purposes, we're just skipping to it being done. Okay, cool. So now if we want, we can look at kubectl logs to see about that. And it's hard to see in the view of my screen, but like if you wanted to look at it, you can see what all it is doing there. Cool. Okay, so now let's do a kubectl get all. So this will show like the majority of things that are in the Velero namespace. So we have our replica sets and then our deployments and our pods. So you can see that Velero is up and running. So there are other things that are running as well, things like the CRDs, and those aren't located here if you're looking for them. So next, let's talk about running applications. So basically here, we are going to be using an application called Ghost. So Ghost basically is just another like blog that you can have similar to WordPress. It uses MariaDB as the database. So basically we'll be using a Helm chart. So it has Ghost, the actual application, and the database as well. So since we're starting a new section, let's just clear things off. Okay, so first, we'll want to create a file. So this will have things such as like the username, the password, email for Ghost itself for you to log into the blog. And then there is one for there's a root password and a regular password for the database. So part of the reason we're setting these is so that we know exactly what it is and it's not going to change or be random. And again, like these are don't use these in real life. These are just examples. They are not secure at all. So let's create that. Okay, so now we need to have the Helm repo. So we're going to add the Bitnami Helm repo. Now let's create the Ghost namespace. So basically all of our things specific to all of what we're going to be running here is going to fall into that namespace. And then we're going to use Helm to install Ghost, giving it a specific version, and then giving it that YAML that we just created. And if you're using Helm 3.2.0 or later, which I actually am, you can do a -- create namespace as part of it instead of creating it separately. Okay, so here we'll see things about how the deployment's incomplete until you configure Ghost with a resolvable host. So basically we will have a load balancer that will be coming up, and we'll need to get the external IP address from that. And then we will use that to update it. So let's take a look to see if it is up yet. Okay, so right now it's still pending. It doesn't take very long though. Cool, yeah, so it's already up there. So the next thing that we'll do is we're going to add that to the YAML that we already created. Instead of, if we were to try adding new sets, we'd have to set all the existing passwords if we didn't use that file. So we're just going to keep all the other things and then add that. So if we get the IP there, then we can add that to the file, and then we can do an upgrade. So the upgrade should look very similar to what we had previously. And you can see when I did the echo here that the host is now there. Okay, cool. So one of the other convenient things is Helm actually will tell us, okay, so what is the blog URL, what is the URL to get to the admin page to add posts and whatnot. So next, I'm just going to do a get all so we can see what all has been created. So we can see that we have our pods are up, we have the services, our deployment, replica sets, and table set. So basically we have everything is up and it's good and running. Okay, so now let's go and try going to the admin URL. Okay, so we have, if we do a cat on the ghost values, we can see what the email address is. So we get that. And then we have our password as well. Okay, cool. So let's pull this out separately. So now that we have that, let's go and create some blog. So I could create a new post, and I'll just call it the same thing, super important post, because you know this is super important, and please don't delete it. Okay, cool. So now we can go over to publish, and we can set it live now. So we'll hit publish. Awesome. So now, like, if we can view the post, we can see that's there. If we go to home, we can see that my super important post is right here. And obviously I didn't add a pretty image like the other ones. Okay, so now let's look at backups. And again, we're pretending that we really care about this post and that we want it to be there in case anything fails and bring it back. So if we look at Velero backup, so there's a few things that we can do with it. So basically there's create, and there's delete, describe, download, get, and logs. So with create, we can do things such as whether we want to put on a specific schedule. I could also just do it as a one-off right now. So right now I'm just going to create a one-off backup. So I'm going to call it Ghastly. And then we're going to do a create on that namespace. Cool. So you can see it's pretty quick. So if I wanted to, I could just do describe on that. We can see what namespaces are included, whether we set any label selectors, any backup hooks, and a bunch of different information about it. And generally speaking, though, you should give it a name that is relevant to maybe like to something that you can remember, like the date or time, or just something that's there for you to be able to tell when was this, why or without having to like dig into all of it, like why do you care about it? Okay. So if we wanted, we could like remove the include namespaces flag. I just put that there so that it's just specifically Ghost and doesn't back up like the entirety of the cluster. Okay. So if we want, we could also create, again, on a schedule. So if I want my schedule to be every minute. So let's copy this and I'll explain what's happening here. So we have it every minute. You can create a schedule, and there's a couple ways to actually define the schedule. So there is the @every, and then there's also like the regular cron that you may be used to. So like these stars and the -1 and such. So we can create that as well. So if we want to take a look and see what backups we have, we should have 2 of them, or 3 of them, if I did something wrong. So let's see. Okay. Right. So yeah, there was another one that was created. So never mind. This is exactly what is expected. I just can't count. Okay. So if we want, we could do like a describe on those and some logs, and I did a little bit of that earlier. Okay. So right now we have the blog we want. Everything's good. Well, let's just say like some random person came, who's not me, which is me, accidentally went and deleted things. So they just decided, all right, your namespace, see ya. And that PVC, or persistent volume claim, well, now what? So all that stuff, it's gone. Like if we do kubectl get namespaces, so we have ghost there, okay. But if we do like a helm list, there's nothing. So if we try to go to that web page and we refresh, well, it's not happy. It's not going to actually be there. So like say if we created a new tab with it. So it's not there. Okay, so now our entire blog is gone, or like Ghost is gone. Everything that we have in there, it's gone. So what do we do? All right, so that's where the restore comes in. So we can take a look to see like what can you do with a Velero restore. So it's kind of the same type of idea as when you have the backup. So if we do a get all, we can verify, okay, there's nothing there anymore. All this, literally everything that we had running in Ghost, it's all gone. And then we can also check that the PVCs, also, they are gone. Or, so actually for this, and yeah, and then we can also check in Ghost. There's nothing there. Okay. So now this is where we get our backups. So we can see, okay, what is there? So we have these ones, and you can see that there's this cron that is creating one every single minute and giving it like the numbers based on the date, etc. after that. So if I want to restore from the backup that we created first, we can see that we submitted it and that it's successful, and that was submitted successfully. So we can like do a describe on that, see what is the backup from and what it's doing that. Okay, so question is, did it work? So now let's do a get all again. Okay, so we can see that right now it is taking time to try creating all of these resources. So if we wait a little bit, they should end up all being up. Okay, so let's run that again. Cool, so now we see everything is up and running. So now if we want to get the IP again, it's the same command that we had earlier. And then the question is whether it has changed or not. So like for the specific demo, it doesn't really matter, but to ensure that basically it works properly, you can update the ghost host in the values file if it's changed. So what we could do is we could also just cat that file. And we can see that in this instance, it didn't change. So if we just copy it and open a new tab, we can see, oh hey, everything is exactly where it was before, which is awesome. So it worked. Basically, we created this application, we added this super important post, and restored it after it got deleted, and it's all back there again. So if we want, we could also like do a describe, and we could also like look at some of the logs. So actually so if we look specifically, so if we do Velero restore, and then we can look to see what can we do. So if we do Velero restore get, so we can see that one, and then we could do a logs on this. And then we can kind of see, okay, what all is happening in here, attempting to like restore the service and all the other things that it's doing. So yeah, that's the end of like putting that all together. So if the next part is, okay, do I want this still running? We can go and uninstall things. So we can uninstall Ghost and then delete the namespace. And then if we wanted to delete the rest of the things there. So to uninstall all the things for Velero and delete the buckets we created, then we could go through the rest of that there. So to learn more, there's a bunch of different links here. So again, this is at tanzu.vmware.com/developer. So thanks for watching.